I hate soccer.
So do you have your own company,
I do.
or are you actually employed by Canisius?
So I was employed by Canisius, but now I have my own company.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I saw you do stuff with Eastern Michigan too.
I do.
So my nephew is currently a gray shirt at Eastern for football.
Oh, okay.
So he had surgery in like July, and so he's going to be a freshman, and then they just delayed it just a little bit. So he's going to join the team in the spring, and then he's going to have his full 4-year eligibility, and he's not going to burn a red shirt or a medical. So what teams are you working with at Eastern and at Canisius? And
At Eastern, it's just the women's basketball team.
okay,
Yeah.
got it.
So Sahar Nasebe was at Canisius University, and then got hired by Eastern Michigan. So in the NCAA world, the carousel is always turning, and coaches are going off to different areas. And so I'm big on relationships.
Yep.
And once I establish a relationship here in Buffalo, then if it goes off somewhere else, I'm happy to continue to facilitate, to keep that relationship going.
Right. And you used to be like cross country coach, track too, or
Yes.
just
Yeah.
so cross country track at Canisius.
Yep.
And then broke off, started your own company, and how many different teams are you working with right now?
Right now, I'm servicing probably somewhere around 600 to 620 athletes. And within that, that's any team at Canisius that currently wants to work with me. So I contract with the athletic department at Canisius. And so I'm accessible to, all the coaches, all the teams, all the student athletes have access to me. And then also at Damon University.
Oh, good.
I work with any of the teams there that are interested as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, do you work with any youth athletes outside of that, or?
Currently, I work with one private client that's a high schooler.
Okay.
And so I try to work mainly with teams.
Okay.
The one private client it's in my sport of cross country and track, so it's something that piqued my interest, and I know the coach one of the coaches that I know through my current contracts kind of pointed me in that direction. And so it was a kind of a friend of a friend situation.
Right.
Typically I don't take on a lot of private clients right now just because the workload is challenging. Right. I would rather work with teams because then you have a greater impact.
Yeah.
And I'm more concerned with creating a high performance environment than I am with working with one individual I want to help each individual on their own personal path to high performance. But if we're curating the environment that surrounds them, the chances are that they're going to be much more successful.
How much contact do you have with your athletes? If you're working with, let's say women's soccer, how often are you working with them? And what is the, I don't want to say curriculum, but what does that look like? What does that program look like?
It really depends on what the competencies of the coach are and the vision of the coach, right? So some coaches are really good at building team culture. If a coach needs help in building team culture, they can bring me in and I can help facilitate team culture.
Right.
We were you saw that I was working with Canisius women's soccer, and so there Ryan Louie will bring me in several times a season. It might be 2 or 3 times, it might be 5 or 6 times. It depends on what he feels that they need to be built up in, every team is different.
Yeah.
In the NCAA, you could be turning over a quarter to half of your roster every year.
Especially now.
Absolutely. And so it's really up to a coach to decide, like, okay, like somebody like Ryan, maybe he and I talk prior to bringing the team back in the preseason, and then he sees what he's got and, what's happening and what's transpiring on the pitch. And then he says, okay, here's where I feel like we could be built up a little bit. Here's where we need a little bit of help. Maybe we touch back in later in the season if there's something that they want to, have a primer on as they go into league play or into, the championship tournament.
Right.
So it really depends on the coach and the situation. I do, as you mentioned, I do contract with Eastern Michigan with the women's basketball team. And there, Coach Nasebe, we do a pretty comprehensive program with their players. So they're really trying to get their players to a really solid psychological foundation, right? So that when they get into stressful, high leverage moments, that they've got something that one of the main 4 sources of confidence is regulation. right? And so do you believe in yourself when you go into a stressful situation that you're going to be able to bring your best forward? Are you saying, I hope this works out today? Right? Do you know, are you confident in the tools that you've got in your toolbox, your skill set, to say, okay, I know I can keep myself within my optimal zone of performance?
What are the other three? So regulation.
Yeah, so regulation, perspiration, right? Hard work, and what we tell ourselves about, the narrative that we create for ourselves about the hard work and the work that we're putting in every day.
Right.
I'm a big fan of intention. When you're going into a hard session, you better be bringing your best and knowing what you're bringing to that session so you can get the most out of it. Okay. And then reflection afterwards. What are you writing down for yourself about the things that you did well that day? And it should be probably a 3 or 4 to 1 ratio of 3 things that you did well to one thing that you want to work on next time. Wow. The way our brains work, we're always scanning for the negatives in our environment. And so if you're allowing yourself to do that, if you're watching film of practice or you're watching film of a game and you're just, everything that's sticking out to you are your mistakes, you're eroding your confidence. Right. So how do you counteract that? What are the things that you're telling yourself about the things that you did well that day? So we've got regulation, we've got perspiration, inspiration. What are the people around you telling you? Right. And so if I'm telling somebody, hey, you're doing great, your practice day was outstanding, or that game was outstanding, here's what you did well, that doesn't mean anything unless it sinks in and they start to repeat that to themselves. Right. So they have to create that narrative again within themselves and tell themselves that information and buy into that information.
And it's like believing that your teammate is actually saying that, or your coach is actually saying that, right?
Yes. Yep.
Go into like a team culture and building team culture. Do you think that stems from coaches, or does it stem from the players and the leadership within the roster?
I think you want to bring in the right players.
Okay.
Right. So in the recruiting process, you want to bring in people that are going to be coachable, that are going to uphold the standards of a program. But I really do think once you get the players there, then it's a matter of how do we continue to keep them motivated to get better, right? And not let them languish, right? Not let them lose motivation, because some people are going to be on a program, a college program or a high school program, and never get, meaningful time on the field.
Right.
And so how do you manage that situation?
How do you make them feel like they're still part of it?
Yeah. Right.
And do you see like a big difference between working with teams of like, okay, a true team sport like soccer versus like a highly individual sport like golf?
Yeah, there is definitely a different, and I also work with individual sports like my bread and butter is cross country, track and field. Work with swimmers, tennis, bowling, right? There's a lot of this, and so it is a lot of how do you motivate yourself to bring your best, but also how do you engage in benevolence, right? That idea that I'm not just here for me, I'm here for the people around me as well.
Right.
And that's a big piece of the puzzle of building trust. And that comes back to team culture also. Like how are we intentionally building trust in this team?
Right.
And a lot of that is, okay, yeah, you have to be in it for you, but you have to be in it, you have to prove to the people around you that you're in it for them as well.
Who did I just see? They were talking about practice, and they're talking about military and how they train, obviously, because you could not like your teammate, but that's a life or death situation. How do you deal with a team that might not get along, but they all have the same goal as the team?
Yeah.
And how do you like break that in terms of making sure that, hey, we're all in this together. We're all, what do they say? It's like 11 different people with the same goal. So
yeah. And I think that's, a lot of times where it comes back to coaches is to set really clear expectations. If we want to have good team culture, we have to set standards and expectations that we uphold on a daily basis, and we're consistent with upholding those things. And so I think one of the expectations that works really well within team culture or even military culture, and I've heard this echoed in interviews, podcast interviews and whatnot with, military higher ups, is you don't have to like everybody. Right. But loving them is non-negotiable, right? You have to respect and love the people around you, and you don't necessarily have to like them, and that's, I think we can be functional that way,
Right.
and we can function at a higher level that way. If you respect this person as a human being, you respect their right to have thoughts and opinions. That doesn't mean that you have to adopt those thoughts and opinions, right? But we have to respect each other.
Has a coach ever came to you with a problem with a roster, like maybe one or two or a click on a roster or anything like that? How do you attack that if that ever comes up?
Yeah, I've dealt with that a lot myself as well. I spent 2 years. My coaching career was 22 years long. 2 years as a modified coach, 10 years as a high school coach, and 10 years as a NCAA Division I coach.
Right.
And so I saw a lot of clicks, and I saw a lot of those inter-team dynamics. So I think if you're having one of those instances on a team, I think that's where setting really clear standards and expectations for the team up front is really good, because then you have something to hold them to. If you have team standards and expectations that you clearly communicate and they sign off on and say, okay, yes, we're adopting these, then you can bring it back to them and say, hey, from my perspective, you're not living up to these team standards. You're not matching this team standard. You're not meeting this. What's your perspective here?
Right.
What are your thoughts on this? It's bound to happen. It's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
We model a lot of inefficient and even damaging team culture within our society.
Yeah.
One of the things, I was a middle school teacher for 11 years. So one of the things you start to see in middle school into high school, and it really carries over into the college world, is common enemy intimacy, right? Where we are trying to find our place in this group. We're trying to establish ourselves. And so I'm going to do that by stepping on somebody else, right? And I'm going to bring myself closer to you we're going to bond by putting somebody else down. And so that's what you see in cliques a lot of time, is people coming together. It's this toxic way of coming together. It's a shortcut to intimacy. It's a shortcut to friendship, because maybe we are gossiping about other people. I'm sharing secrets that other people told me in confidence with you because I want to bring you closer to me. Right. And eventually what that does is it undermines it in two ways. One, the people that you're sharing the secrets about that aren't yours to share, they'll find out about it. Yep. Everybody finds out about everything in a team setting, right? And so then they're not going to trust you. And the person that I'm talking to and giving those secrets to is going to look at me and say, well, I can't trust them, because they're telling me everything about the other people. Right. And so it's a way that people deal with their insecurities, and instead of embracing who they authentically are, right, the good pieces of themselves, the self-concept, most people don't work on their self-concept. Right. Their self-concept is centered around all the external praise that they've been given for 10 years. Exactly. And so their identity becomes wrapped up in the sport that they're doing.
How do you break that?
You got to show them a different way, right? So that's the outside-in model of confidence, right? Everything that's happened, I have a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. And so you're constantly, from the time they're young, you start praising them unintentionally for the things that they're doing. Right. And so you see that and you say, okay, well, I get attention, I get love by performing. And so I need to do more to be more. And so that's a problematic way to go through things, because now if you get to the level where you're not doing as much, you step up to the NCAA Division I, Division II, Division III, whatever it is, and now everybody's as good as you, right? You feel like less because you're doing less. Right. And so that's where a lot of insecurities bubble up, and that's where you get a lot of toxic behavior. And you have that, you asked the question initially about how do you deal with cliques within programs. How do we teach these people, how do we teach the young men and women to come at it from a different direction? How do we say, okay, you've built yourself from the outside in for years. Now we have to look inward and build you from the inside out. That's how you build really resilient confidence, so confidence doesn't waver.
How long does that take for like a freshman coming in to deal with that? Because their clubs never had somebody like you come in, or like... I think that youth sports is very individualized, even the team sports, because it's all about trying to get a college scholarship. Sure. But then once you get on that campus, it's complete. It's complete. You're part of something, and we're family, and I don't know if some people don't like that term when they're talking about like team sports, but like you're all in this together. And like, how does that transition work for those younger players?
Yeah, it's I think it's interesting. One of the things that we've had a shift in the job market now, right? And there are high level jobs that are looking at, okay, not just what is the skill set, what is the GPA, what is, the program that they're coming out of, but what soft skills do they have? What life skills do they have? Are they able to talk about their core values? Are they able to talk about leadership? And are they, are they familiar with the differences between servant leader, transformational leader, transactional leader, right? And all of these things, I think that's something that we put so much emphasis on the performance side of youth sports. And okay, I want to get this college scholarship, and so I have to perform, I have to put these metrics out there. But as a college coach, if you've got somebody coming in and they're saying like, hey, coach, I just want you to let you know my core values are growth and guidance. And I give you my 30-second elevator pitch on what my core values are. What are the core values of this program? Because I want to know is this a good fit for me and my core values, and how can I bring my 2 core values into this program? Right. It's so rare that you have a student athlete coming out of high school that really has clarity on who they are as a person.
Boom.
And what their strengths are, their values, their authentic strengths when I'm being a teammate, what are the traits that I bring forward when I'm being the best version of myself as a teammate? So that I have clarity and I have intention to go into practice and be that person. Right? What are my strengths as a soccer player? Why did this coach recruit me here? Right? So that I can really engage with those and be intentional and make sure I'm bringing those to practice every day. We don't set our student athletes up to have that inner sense of self, that self-concept, that really strong self-concept. And so you get a lot of student athletes that they just don't have a purpose.
Right.
They don't know what their purpose is. I guess my purpose is to play soccer. I guess my purpose is to play basketball. And okay, well, now you're on the bench, so what's your purpose now?
Right. Exactly. It's self-awareness. It's like being more than just a soccer player. And on with Josh Allen, right? I saw him in an interview, and he was talking about his wife and stuff. And the interviewer asked, "What has your wife taught you about yourself that you didn't know?" And Josh goes, "That I'm more than just a football player." Mm-hmm. And a lot of these players identify as their sport. Yeah. So we talked about the freshmen incoming. What about the seniors outgoing? What do you see, especially if you've worked with the team for multiple years? Sure. How do you see that transformation, that from freshman to basically finally becoming an adult and knowing that self-awareness and everything?
Yeah. Well, hopefully what I see is that they're letting go of that sense of I am the insert sport here, right? I am the soccer player. I am the baseball player. I am the basketball player, right? Hopefully what I'm seeing is I am, and then they put in the traits that they are. And then those traits help them to become successful in that sport. Right. Because at some point in time, this is all going to end for all of us, right? Like Father Time is undefeated. Yep. I'm still a runner, but I run pretty slow these days, right? Like I'm probably 25 years past my peak in running, 20 to 25 years past that. So how do we, that's one of the things that's hard for student athletes as they're leaving as seniors. I would like to see them play free, where they're no longer playing with the weight of the identity of the sport on their backs, right? So now they're having fun with it again. Can we reconnect them with joy? Because a lot of these younger student athletes coming out of high school have lost a lot of the joy. And there are studies that show when you go on to college and you secure a financial scholarship to play your sport, that takes away motivation. You would think that it would increase motivation, but now we feel obliged to this. We feel tied to this. It's no longer about what initially motivated us to do this, which was this is a lot of fun.
Right.
Now it is the job. And it's a hard job, and it's a weird job where you get yelled at all the time, right? Like, how many workplaces do you want to go into and you're getting yelled at on a daily basis,
Exactly.
right? So it can be counterproductive for the student athletes to get these scholarships.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping by the time they get to that junior and senior year, we develop a really strong self-concept where they start to see themselves as a reflection of their core values, right? A reflection of the traits that they can bring forward, a reflection of their strengths. And those are things that are controllable rather than the outcomes. The outcomes are not controllable because the opponents are trying just as hard as you are.
Yeah.
And so if you can tie yourself to those other things, then you can put your best foot forward, and it's not as consequential. When we step out there and our identity is on the line, that's a lot of consequence. And human beings are already really bad at being in the present moment. But you throw on that pressure of that added pressure of, I'm being judged by this, and this is going to resonate with my worth as a person. That's so much pressure that it's almost inevitable that you're going to start either focusing on the past, what happened 2 possessions ago when you made a mistake, or you're focusing on the outcome. You've got 5 minutes left in the game and you're down by 1 goal, and all you're worried about is, well, there's only 5 minutes left. Now there's only 4 minutes and 30 seconds left. Now there's only 3 minutes and 50 seconds left, and we're still down by 1 goal. And you're not focusing on the here and the now, the present moment, which is where you play your best. It's the only place you can affect the outcome is in the present moment. But we're always focusing on the outcome.
It's crazy how you said like the joy is, and you're now tied to this, because I see a lot of seniors, once they commit, their work standard kind of dips a little bit, and you see less attendance at club training and whatnot, because it's almost like a feeling of I've arrived and I've accomplished my goal, and once summer hits, then I'll go all out. And it's just going back to the click thing. Has it ever gotten to a point where some players had to be removed in your experience?
I have not gotten to that point. I think, contrary to what some people might think, I don't think anybody is showing up to be a lesser version of themselves.
Right.
And so if we have somebody who is in authority, a coach, a figure, an authority figure, because there's always a power dynamic, right? And coaches lose track of that sometimes, lose sight of that power dynamic and how powerful that is and how challenging that is for student athletes. So that's something to always really keep in mind. As long as there's somebody in authority who can commit to having hard conversations and holding standards, I think most people want to be the better version of themselves. They just want somebody to show them how.
Right.
And so if anytime I've ever come to somebody and said, this is not meeting the standard, this is not good enough, you can do better than this. I'm not judging you as a person, I'm judging your product. Your product right now is not good enough.
Right.
The way you're approaching this is not what we do here. Here's the way to do it.
Right.
We've had good results.
How do you deal with players or maybe groups that always feel like somebody's out to get them, or you're not passing to me because of something else, or the coach is playing somebody because of this? Like how do you change that individual psyche? This is a problem I see with parents too at the youth level.
Yeah, and sometimes it depends. You want to build awareness first. Right. So you want to sit down with the individual and say, okay, from your perspective, what's happening?
Yeah.
I want to validate your experience, right? It's your experience. You're the expert in your experience. So tell me what you're experiencing.
Right. And
then let's see if we can match that up against the light of reality, right? What do you think might actually be happening here? Right. And so sometimes that victim mentality, if it's caused by past experiences, we might not be able to unravel that in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, right? That's one of the challenges that NCAA coaches are facing is you're getting these student athletes in, and you might have 1 to 3, or if you're lucky, you'll have 4 years to try to get them to a better place. And you're unraveling sometimes 10 to 15 years of past experience, with coaches or parents or, you know, any other individuals that have been influential in this individual's life,
Right.
that have shaped them to this point in time. And so how do we unpack that? And I can lead a horse to water, right, over and over again, but if their past experience is such that they're not willing to listen, you know, at some point, what I do has to be put into practice.
Right.
You know, the mental side of things, I can tell you what to do, right? Or I can come alongside you and try to guide you to a certain place, but you've got to do the work.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's beyond my competencies, you know. So in the spectrum of psychology, you know, if we look at maladaptive all the way up to thriving, right in the middle is functional, and I'm functional to thriving. You know, so I'm very versed in performance psychology, physiology, positive psychology. But if there's something in somebody's past, you know, experience that is kind of they're holding on to it, that's where I have to refer out to, you know, maybe the counseling center at one of the local institutions, or some of the counselors or therapists that I know within the Buffalo area.
How much of that do you get into the mental health, the mental side of everything? Because, you know, that's one of the most important things in sports over the last probably 10 years, of that focus. Do you work a lot on that side or not?
I do. A lot of what we do in sports psychology or mental performance is positive psychology, right? And so we're trying to give them a better foundation, a better psychological foundation to function from. And so that's a lot of what I do, is to say, like, okay, well, let's build your core first, right? Your core self-concept, and build your foundation so that when you get pushed off of your foundation, what can we come back to, right? So I try to be kind of an antidote to fake it till you make it, right? It's one of my least favorite sayings.
I can't stand that.
So in a high pressure situation where this matters to us, I don't want anybody faking it till they make it.
Right.
Right. What I want you to do is to take confident action, right? So that we're going back to, we're trying to reconnect with who we are at our core and what our strengths are. And then we're acting from there. I don't know what's going to happen. There are way too many variables in any sport.
That's outside of your control.
Yeah, that are outside of your control, and we don't know what's going to happen, right? So I just want you to be able to reconnect with what you know and then move forward from there. So if I'm reconnecting with my core values of growth and guidance, if I'm reconnecting with some of the authentic traits that I've been fostering over the last 5 to 10 years of patience, vulnerability, presence, that's where I'm coming from in a stressful situation, it's probably going to go a lot better than, well, let's wing it, right?
Who came up with that?
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
It rhymes, so it's going to be popular.
It's so annoying.
Our psychology likes poetic elements. So.
Right. You talk about core values a lot. How do you build core values within a group? Mm-hmm. Is it the coach? Is it you? Is it both? Is it like what goes into that process? Because I think that there's a lot of, especially youth coaches, that they don't have core values, or these youth clubs, I don't know if they have core values.
And I think they probably do have core values, but they're not emphasizing them, right? And so I think it really helps to say, okay, well, what are the core values of this program? Even if you've got a youth club, what are the core values that we are gaining clarity on and that we really want to keep in the front of our mind, right? We don't want to lose sight of these things, because it's really easy to lose sight of what our purpose is. No coach gets into coaching to be a terrible coach, to be a bad influence, right?
Right.
Like nobody's out there saying, like, you know what, I really just don't like kids very much, so I think I'm going to go into coaching and just see what I can do here, right? Yeah. We get into coaching for noble ideals, and then pressure sends it sideways, money sends it sideways. You know, it's the monetization of youth sport. I mean, I don't know where it started, if it trickled up from youth sport or if it trickled down from NCAA, but there's a lot of money involved in sport, and it's unfortunate. So what I would recommend to coaches, even at youth levels, or even a mom or a dad who's going to help coach their 5-year-old soccer team, right? Okay, what are the core values that I want to try to help institute within this program and give to these kids? And so if a coach can have clarity on 2 or 3 core values that are kind of non-negotiable within their program, I think then you can, early on in a program, you might institute those, and those become the core values of the program. Or if you're willing to, you can say, okay, here are my 2 or here are my 3, and I want you as a group, we're going to do an exercise to help you establish your own personal core values, because that's going to be good for them just at baseline, right? And then from that exercise, we're going to break into small groups, and we're going to talk about what are the 3 that we have in this program already, and then what are the things that we see reflected within our team, the core values that you all are bringing. When I do this with a group, I'll usually throw up an app like Mentimeter on the board that's you can do like word clouds up there.
Okay.
And so the kids will scan it with their phone, and they say, okay, now everybody, we've done the work, now you input your 2 core values. And so they'll put all theirs in, and if there's a shared one, it'll get larger and it'll kind of center in the middle of the word cloud. Okay. And so we can then see like what are some of the common values that we have within this team.
Right.
All right, now that we see that, let's break into our working groups, and let's try to figure out another 2 to 3 core values that we have within this team, right? So that it's a shared experience then. Okay, they're buying into the coaches, and they feel like they're establishing this, they're creating this team culture, right? These core values, and then they have autonomy over it. They have choice, right? They have ownership of this. So I think that's a great way to do it. If you're working with a youth team that's 5, 6 years old, and you start talking to the kids about like, okay, let's establish your core values. Like, it's probably a little heady for them, right?
Absolutely.
But maybe you have your couple of them, and then you say, okay, guys, what do you want this to be all about? And they're probably going to say fun, right? Like, okay, right? Or maybe they're going to say friends, right? Like ask them, like, what do you want this practice to be all about today?
Right. In your own coaching, when did you realize I need core values, or I need to instill core values in my teams? Well, how? Because some young coaches might overlook that, and they're too focused on the tactics of the game or the technical, and they forget that side of development.
Too late I came to it. I wish that this had been some of the training that I had when I went into coaching at the middle school and high school level. I did have to do a coaching certification through the BOCES program when I was coaching. But it was more concerned with like the facilitation of coaching, the bureaucracy of it, ordering uniforms, that sort of thing, and some of the philosophical stuff. But there wasn't a scaffold there, right? There wasn't a structure there to say, okay, here's the philosophy of it that we want to do, and here's the practical application.
Right.
And so I think that's where bringing somebody like myself in can be helpful for young coaches, because I can help give you a scaffold, right? To say like, hey, I want you to grow and evolve over time, but here's something that's worked for a lot of coaches, right? And so here's something that's kind of a tried and true, and if you do this, it's going to be a good starting point, right? I think I'm a very, very metaphorical person, being a former English teacher, and so the way I look at team culture is like, you've got this flower bed that you've been turning and fertilizing and mulching for years, right? And you've gotten into a really good place, and now you better plant what you want in there, or else something's going to grow. And it's probably going to be something that's more prolific than the beautiful plants and flowers that you wanted. Right? It's going to be, something's going to grow in there.
I like that one.
And so I think that's where, when I was at Canisius early on, there were a couple coaches, Dave Smith, the hockey coach, really got into like the DISC model of personality profiling.
Okay.
And so he gave me a book on the DISC model. And so I started having my student athletes take the DISC model personality profile. And basically what that tells you is like many of your behavioral tendencies. It will give you some of your strengths, and then it will also help you see some of your blind spots. And so that's where I started to get into this idea of like, well, I should really be doing this regularly so that we can figure out what our strengths and our deficiencies are. And then how do we emphasize these things? And so that's where I kind of got into team culture, was being really intentional with the overall development of the human being, not just caring for them, but really developing them in ways that's going to round them out so that their self-concept is much more resilient and much stronger, right? If we build that self-concept by exploration, by building awareness, by saying, hey, this is what you scored on this personality trait. This is not written in stone. If you don't like this, one of the things that I learned about the DISC model, right, being a C, is that I am very introverted and task-oriented. I knew I was introverted long before that, but I'm very task-oriented. And so a lot of my coaching was always, well, let's look at the numbers. Let's look at the numbers of this. And if you can do this workout, if you can do this many 400s at this pace, you should be able to run this time, right? And so I often early on would lose track of the human side of performance, and every individual is very different.
Right.
It's not there is no simple equation to performance. And so I've gotten a lot better from that point inside, because it said one of my pitfalls was, or one of my blind spots was losing track of relationships, losing track of the person, being very, kind of cold and calculated. I was like, oh, that's not how I want to see myself. Right. So let me lean into this personal side and really get to know people, right? And really try to build them holistically rather than just building the workouts that should come out to the times that you want to see.
The impact when you made that switch, how much more did you see, like how much more of an impact you were making on your athletes than maybe prior to focusing on that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay, so you just talked about measurables, kind of, with like the times, especially in cross country and track, everything's measurable. How do you see a difference in the type of athlete and the type of sport when something could be so subjective, like soccer, versus something that is cut dry, stats-based athletes? Do you see a difference in that, in mental performance?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that happens when you have a stat-based avenue for performance is you get a lot of focus on the outcome. Especially with runners, they're very, very fixated on the times.
Right.
And so how can we walk that back a little bit? And you might have the same thing in soccer, where it's like, okay, well, how many goals did I score?
Right.
And how can we walk that back to the point where it's more controllable for you? I think one of the best quotes that I heard about this was Lauren Fleischman was talking about her college coach. She was a multi-time national, I think she was a national champion for Stanford, and then she was a professional runner for a while. And she said that one thing that her coach used to reframe it was, let's put ourselves in a position to do this, right? So you throw that on there, right? Rather than let's run a 17 flat in the 5K today. Well, let's put ourselves in a position to run 17 flat.
Right.
Instead of let's be the state champion today, let's put ourselves in position to be the state champion, right? Instead of scoring 2 goals today, scoring a goal in soccer is hard, really hard.
Right.
How many times did you put yourself in position to have an opportunity to score? Right? How many times did you pay attention to the little details and create opportunities for yourself or create opportunities for a teammate? Because the goalie's probably going to be pretty good, right? You're going to knock a couple off of the crossbar, right? Like there's just so many things there that if you're just basing it on that metric, there's not a lot of room to feel good about what you're doing.
Just that one little switch, one little word.
Just one little word. Let's put ourselves in position to do this.
I heard something with a fitness instructor kind of say something along the same lines. It's if you just change one word in your life will be better. Like instead of saying I can't eat that, just say I don't eat that, or I can't do this, I don't do this. Right. In terms of changing habits and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, just one little perspective could change. What other methods do you have? If a kid is just having a bad day, they got a bad grade, or trouble with their boyfriend or girlfriend or something like that, or maybe something back home is happening. How do you recalibrate them to just focus on the task at hand? Is it that? Is it put yourself in a position too?
Yeah, sometimes. I think really what's beneficial is we want to become psychologically flexible, right? That's really what I'm trying to do with teams, with programs, with individuals. And the first step of that is developing that core self-concept. So let's work with core values. Let's work with authentic traits. Let's work with your strengths, right? I'm a big person of being a strength-based practitioner. Let's lean into your strengths. So we're establishing that foundation for you. And then inevitably, we're going to get pushed off of our foundation. It's going to happen, right? Life happens every single day to all of us, right? So when life pushes you off of your foundation, what are then the tools that we introduce that might be able to center you and bring you back to that place? Right? So there are any number of tools that I work with. I feel like my office is a laboratory, right? Because it's like what works for me is not going to work necessarily for somebody else. And so we have to go through a number of tools and learn a number of tools so that they can experiment with those tools and say, what works for me in these situations, right? So I'm a big proponent of breath work. I want all of my clients to be elite breathers because most people, most programs are not being very intentional with their breath, right? And so what I mean by that is the breath is the way that we can take control of the excitement level of the brain. It's autonomic nervous system. It's you and I are breathing as we're having this conversation, right? We're also digesting. Our hearts are beating, right? There's a whole host of things going on in the body. But if we want to, we can stop our breath. We can hold our breath. And so by recognizing that, we can use the breath to either increase or decrease the excitement level in the body, right? So at any time that we are emphasizing an exhale, long exhales, we're going to be pushing away from sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight response, which is where we go when we approach competition. We get pushed into fight or flight from pressure, right? And with long exhales, we're going to be pulling back over into parasympathetic rest and recovery, right? And we calm down a little bit. We gain better thought processing. We reconnect with our prefrontal cortex and we have higher level thought processing. We have better coordination, right? When we get too excited, too pushed into activation in that fight or flight realm, you lose fine motor skills, you know? So by working with athletes on becoming elite breathers, now it goes back to that confidence, right? Again, of, you know, regulation. And do I believe in myself that when I get into this situation, okay, I've been practicing my breath. I do my breath work for 10 minutes a day. And so when I get into this situation, I've been doing it at practice in between. A simple way to practice breath work at practice, between every drill, when you're standing around for a moment, take one intentional breath. In through the nose, long exhale out through the mouth.
I'm thinking of Cristiano Ronaldo. Every time he's about to take a free kick or a PK, you just see him just back up and go. And it's like, it's that breath work. Have you read the book Breath?
I have not.
I haven't either. I have it at my home. But I wonder if that's what that is about.
There's a lot of information out there on breath, on breath work. And so like I try to read more of the peer-reviewed studies. And those books are based on peer-reviewed studies. They use that as notes and stuff. But there's any number of books that you can get. I mean, the simple thing for your listeners to know is if you want to calm down, take deep breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. If you're ever on the sidelines or you have a break in play, breathe through your nose, right? Because you're going to take longer breaths through your nose. You're going to fully ventilate and you know, have deeper breaths. And so you're getting better. If we're breathing through our mouth, we're hyperventilating. And so you're going to oxygenate your body, but you're decreasing carbon dioxide to the point where you can't release that oxygen that's within the body now into the areas that need it, like the brain.
And that's how you want us to breathe during running as well, right?
I would love it if people could breathe through their nose during running. I have a really hard time with that. Right? If you're out there playing on the pitch and you're going at it and you're going hard, breathe through any orifice that will give you air, right? Like if you can get your ears involved, like go for it, right? But when you have those intentional moments where things calm down a little bit and you want to bring yourself back to a point of clarity, right? Or the self-talk is getting really loud because you're really pushed over into sympathetic, that fight or flight activation.
Right.
Breathe through the nose, right? If you've got some downtime, breathe long and deep through the nose and out through the mouth, and that's going to bring you back to a more centered place.
Can we go back to the strength-based,
Yeah.
how you're a strength-based coach? I believe that confidence comes from knowing what you are good at, and knowing what you're not good at, and it's okay that you're not good at this thing.
Can't be good at everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I feel like when I became self-aware as a coach, it's like, you know what, I care. It was just me caring. I care more about the technical aspect of the game because that's more individualized, and I think that I can individually improve versus the tactical stuff. Like I'll let somebody else do all of that.
Sure.
And when I became self-aware, I became more confident. Like I was like, I don't even really care about that stuff.
Yeah.
Is that kind of like the pathway to being a strength-based coach?
Yeah, I think if you want to be a strength-based coach, I think you need to be able to first accurately assess what somebody's strengths are. I think it helps to ask those individuals so that you know what they think their strengths are as well. Sometimes people have interesting ideas of what their strengths might be. It might not match up with what the coach is seeing, in performance, but it's good to ask, right? And it gives them ownership of it. And you want this to be a collaboration. You're going to get more buy-in from somebody if you can convince them that it's their idea.
Right.
So that's kind of the motivational interviewing way to go around things. So in a strength-based approach, I like to sit down with an athlete and use a strength-based performance profile. Basically, it just asks you questions about like, okay, well, what do you need to be an elite player in this sport? And then after you list out 6 to 8 things, okay, now which of these are your strengths, right? And so which of these do we want to lean into? There's a reason that a coach probably asked you to be on their youth league team or their travel team. There's a reason that a coach is recruiting you to their university. Have clarity on that reason, right? And if you're a coach, really make it clear to that individual, like, hey, this is what I saw in you, and so this is what I really want to develop over the next 2 years. So for me as a mental performance coach or a mental performance consultant, what I would love to see is that a student athlete or any athlete is out there working hard on their strengths, and they're putting that piece together, and they're really emphasizing that, being really intentional with that, so that that coach sees them and says, I have to get them on the field. Like, look at how well they're doing at that. I have to get them on the field.
Right.
And then my job is to come alongside them and say, hey, what kind of regulation piece are you willing to practice on a daily basis so that when you do get out there on the field and you have your moment, you're not compromised by your thoughts and doubts, your thoughts and your feelings, your emotions, right? So you can control that the mental side doesn't become the kink in the hose or the choke point for your performance. When you get your opportunity to get out there, I want you to let it rip, right? And I don't want you to be second guessing yourself or overthinking something. We want to keep you right in that sweet spot for your performance as far as like your activation is concerned.
I was a goalkeeper, and I had this routine, and I would visualize, and I would go back to like some of my best games, and I would just walk the field kind of like by myself, and then I would always like say to myself like, and I would look around at all the other players and be like, I'm the best player on this field. Mm-hmm. Self-talk and how, because not every player has that.
Sure.
And how does one develop that? Can it be developed? Can it be taught? Yeah. Can it be, how? Because some people could make a mistake and it leads to a second mistake and a third and a fourth, and then they kind of like fall apart. Whereas that like next play mentality, not everybody has that. Like how do you develop that?
Yeah, it can definitely be developed. So I'll address the self-talk piece first. There's 2 types of self-talk. There's type 1 self-talk, which is what naturally happens, right? And again, as we approach competition, our activation level is rising. Activation is energy, right? It's that nervous system energy. It's that fight or flight energy that you're going to get. It's non-negotiable. If somebody is not getting activated as they approach competition, we have bigger problems, right? So we want to be able to say, okay, when you reached out to me initially, you talked about mindsets, right? And I think one of the most productive mindsets we can have is a stress-enhancing mindset, to let people know that when you feel activated before a game, you might say, I feel nervous. You might say, I feel excited. They're exactly the same thing. It's energy. Right. It's activation. It's nervous system activation. And so that's just a mindset. That's a reframing to say, am I going to tell myself the narrative, the story that I'm nervous right now because I'm not sure if I have the resources necessary to meet this challenge in front of me?
Right.
Or am I going to tell myself, hey, this is a big opportunity. Of course I'm excited. Right. And so can we flip that switch and recognize that stress, that reaction within the body is positive, right? Right before the last Summer Olympics, they came out with a study that said, a big difference between the podium finishers at the Olympics and the non-podium finishers was that simple mindset of, when I feel this in my body, my stomach is doing flip-flops, right? The butterflies in the stomach. My mouth is dry. My hands are sweaty. My legs feel heavy. I got a pounding heartbeat, or my chest is tight, or my body feels tight. The podium finishers, their mindset was, oh yeah, this is it. This is my body getting ready to go.
Right.
Top performance, right? I need this. And those that finished off the podium, more likely their response was, not this again. I hate this. I don't like feeling like I can't eat anything the morning before a big competition.
Right.
But I know that that's just the way it's going to be. And so I have to accept that and say, this is my body getting ready for top level competition. I need this activation. And so it's that reframing process and that accepting process of, yeah, this is a little bit uncomfortable and that's the inconvenience of it, but it's my body getting ready to go.
Right.
It's my body, shunting blood away from the internal organs out into the skeletal muscles so I can run faster, farther, jump higher. There's a whole host of things that happen. Some of you shunt blood away from the epidermis, so that if you're in a fight or flight situation and you're sustaining minor wounds, that you're not going to bleed out, right? When we get into activation state, fight or flight, the muscles around your eyes contract and your pupils dilate, so you have better vision and quicker reflexes. Your airways open up so you can get more oxygen into the body. Like, there's a difference. There's a reason why you perform better in competition than you do in practice. And sympathetic nervous system, activation is a big part of that. Adrenaline flowing in the body.
Yeah.
All of those things. So when we talk about self-talk, when we go into that state, the tendency is for the brain to say, what the heck is happening? Something is probably dangerous here. And the brain, one of its main jobs is to predict the future so that you stay alive. It's a predictive machine, not a reactive machine. And so that's when we talk about skill acquisition, right? In soccer or any other sport. If you're a goalie, I don't want you just taking kicks from certain distance out towards you over and over again. Right. I want it to be varied. I want it to be coming in like more a game situation, so that you're developing that accumulation of knowledge, right? Like, you see major league pitchers have such a hard time hitting a softball pitcher because it's a totally different body motion. Yeah. The ball's releasing from a different place. Everything is different about it. And so it's a very hard for their brain to predict where it's going to be.
Right.
You can't react to a 95 mile an hour fastball. You predict where it's going to be based off of all your past experience.
Exactly.
So when the brain can't predict what's going to happen, the brain doesn't know the outcome of sport, it gets very nervous. And so then it's trying to get you out of there, basically. And so where self-talk comes from is the default mode network, right? And the default mode network is basically just the network in your brain that fires when your brain's not really doing anything. And it also kicks in when we're getting really stressed.
Yeah.
And so that default mode network will tap into places that store past failures, traumas, right? Like the amygdala, and it'll pull some things forward that are going to tell you like, hey, I don't know what's going to happen, but here's some past embarrassing moments in your life and some past failures in your life and the time when we felt like this and then we really blew it.
Right.
And so that's what you start to tell yourself. If you're untrained, your internal self-talk when you approach stress and pressure will typically go negative. And so that's type 1 self-talk. Type 2 is, what is the narrative that we are intentionally telling ourselves? Have we developed a mantra for ourselves so that we know, hey, at some point, I'm going to have to make a
save.
Yeah, save. Maybe I'm going to
something.
face a penalty kick.
Exactly.
As a goalie.
Right.
Okay, and so what do I want in my head at that moment in time? Do I want type 1? Do I want my default mode network spinning around and trying to tell me, like, get out of here. This is not going to be good. Because it's rarely good for penalty kicks. What, they're like 80% made, right? Something around there.
Yeah.
Right? So
forward should make it.
Yeah, you should make it. And so as a goalie, you're like, you could be telling yourself like, well, here we go.
Exactly.
Give up a point here. Or you've got a mantra, something that you're putting into your mind that's going to keep you free and allow you to react very quickly. You know, so you can train yourself to have self-talk. What I would tell the listeners is base your self-talk in reality. So when you were telling yourself, I'm the best player on that field,
right,
you probably were, or at least arguably, you could make a case for yourself being the best player on the field.
Right.
If you're telling yourself, like, I'm the best shooter in the NCAA, and, you know, you're playing for one of our local Division I teams, you're probably not, right? At some point in time, your self-talk is going to come up against reality, and you're not going to believe yourself.
Right.
Right. So you want to have your self-talk based in what your reality is.
Okay. So there's next play mentality.
Yes.
Right. And that's just within the game.
Yeah.
What if you lose the game? Or if you have a big win? How do you recalibrate? Be like, okay, next game, next. So like, because there's always that up-down theory. It's like when you guys play out of your minds, there's always a come down to earth.
Yeah.
Or if you're like one of the worst performances of the season, there's nowhere to go but up. How do you attack that roller coaster?
Yeah. So, you know, if you want to talk quick about the next play mentality, I think what that comes down to is some people come to it intuitively, right? Some people develop it for themselves. That's not always the case. If you want to get better at next play mentality, what you have to recognize is there is a cycle involved with plays, right? Performance can lead to thoughts, which leads to an emotional response, and then back to performance again. And so if you have a negative performance, and then your thoughts after that, if you're untrained, are probably not going to be positive.
Right.
And those negative thoughts are going to lead to a negative emotional response, right? You're going to feel down. And then that's going to lead probably to another substandard performance. And so that's where you start to see the choking spiral.
Yeah.
Right. And they get caught in this spiral of, okay, I missed a shot or a defender, you know, scored over me. And so now I'm up in my head and thinking about it and I'm feeling about it. And then when the next opportunity to perform comes around, I'm not ready for it. And so then that drives me further down that spiral and we just go down from there. Right. So what we want to think about with that is to say, okay, I need to be able to interrupt that spiral. So if I have a play that was suboptimal, how am I going to interrupt that? Is it with a physical interruption, right? So sometimes you could do like a clap of the hands. You could smack your legs, right? Like you could have, one thing that I've worked on with a couple players is, in basketball is pat the chest a couple times. Because it's your physical thing to say, okay, that was me. I've got this. And then your teammates are also seeing it and seeing you take ownership of that, right? And so it brings them closer together. And for you, that is your physical piece where you are saying like, okay, let me interrupt this spiral. Let me pat my chest, the number of times that I pat my chest.
Right.
Right. And then after I do that physical interrupt, I now need to replace those thoughts with something. Now I put in my type 2 self-talk, right? The self-talk that I've put in. Okay, and it might be next play. Maybe I do a physical interruption, and then I say, okay, next play, and I keep telling myself next play until the next play starts.
Right.
It's those down moments in between plays that can be really damaging.
Right.
You think of a sport like volleyball, where every time point's over, they've got 5 to 10 seconds where there's a stoppage in play.
Yep.
And a lot can happen within the brain in 5 to 10 seconds. You can go to some pretty dark places in 5 to 10 seconds. So, like they all come together and they do their team huddle.
Right.
And sometimes that works. And contact with your teammates is really important, whether it's physical or verbal contact is really important in play. But after that, and you've got another 3 to 5 seconds left after you make contact with your teammates before the next serve comes, what are you intentionally putting into your head?
Right.
If you're not being intentional, something's going to fill that space. And it's like the flower bed, right? Like if you're not growing something that you want there, something else is going to sprout up.
Right.
So there are definitely ways that you can train somebody up to get better at the next play mentality, right? That's one of the things that I do with teams is to say, okay, what is your protocol? When you find yourself, I use the stoplight analogy. This came from Ken Revisa. He was out in California, one of the universities, and then he worked a lot with baseball. But he would use a stoplight of analogy of, okay, green, if you're in green, everything's go. You're all good, right?
Right.
If you find yourself slipping into yellow, we know that play is going to start to suffer, but you're probably going to be okay still. But we have to recognize and address that and use our tools to try to bring us back to green. We don't want to go from yellow to red. Red is where you're now beating yourself. It's not any longer just harder because you're battling the opponent and you're battling your internal thoughts. You are firmly implanted in, I suck, right? I can't do this. I'm not good enough. I don't belong here. Insert any number of things that pop into the brain.
Syndrome.
Yeah, imposter syndrome, right?
Yeah.
Any of those. Or you're pushed way over into your activation state where now you have no touch on the ball.
Yeah.
Because you're pushed all the way up to a 9.5 or 10 out of 10 in activation, and that's panic mode, right? And so we're not going to remember what we should be able to do because we've lost control of the prefrontal cortex or lost connection with it, and we're going to have no touch on anything we do.
Right.
Now we're throwing the ball out of bounds, right? In basketball, we're missing, we're dribbling off of our foot. We're doing everything wrong because we just have lost fine motor skill control as well.
Right.
So we want to be able to recognize when we're in green, what does that feel like? What does that sound like? Right? What are my thoughts? What's my body language like? Where's my focus? When it starts to drift into yellow, okay, now my thoughts are somewhere else. How do I get back to green? What works for me? What tools? Is it some intentional breaths? Is it connecting with my teammates? That's a big piece for a lot of people. One of the things we do to try to find your optimal zone for your performance is to say, what emotions do you like to feel before you compete? And people like to feel connected. Mm-hmm. Like people in general like to feel connected. That's one of the things that we strive for, is to find relationships and find connection. Nobody says, I like to feel really isolated and alone before I go out there to compete. And so if you don't want it before you get out there, you also don't want to feel isolated and alone when you're out on the field. And when you make a bad play, you probably feel pretty isolated and alone.
Right.
So can you come together and connect with your teammates? What are the things that are going to bring me from yellow back to green instead of allowing myself to go into red? Because once we get to red, it's really hard to come back.
Do you see a difference in men and women when it comes to that? Of that connectivity and the feeling alone, even pregame and in the trenches, air quotes?
I think there are definitely differences and nuances when you're coaching men and women. I've coached both for a long time. I think what it really comes down to is have you spent the time to develop those connections? Rather than just the X's and O's, have you really been intentional with building the relationships within a program? Mm-hmm. And I think the programs that really focus on relationships are the ones that are consistently good. Yeah. You'll have some programs that come on hot and they just have the right
players and
the right mentality, right? But it's not sustainable.
Right.
And typically those coaches, those players don't know how they did it. And so they can't recreate it. But when you've got something like you mentioned Josh Allen earlier, I think the Bills are great in their culture of bringing in good guys for culture, but then once they get there, really letting them be themselves, letting them have ownership and autonomy of what they're doing, and then developing really strong relationships. You know, how many times have you seen those players go off and make money somewhere else and then come back to the Bills to be more successful? You know, on lesser contracts.
Right.
You know, and it sounds like it's cliche or it's lip service, but, you know, I think they really do value the individuals, value the humans.
Yes.
And so that allows them to have better performance.
To realize that you're more than just a football player, that you're more than just a soccer player. Do you think...
So yeah, there are nuances between men and women for sure, but I think if you're really focusing on the relationship aspect, and I think that's a big part of feedback as well. If you want feedback to land, you've got to build a relationship with the person first so that they feel really confident that you're not just attacking them or tearing them down.
Right. Can you talk about like leadership just a little bit? Like,
Sure.
Do you think leadership can be taught or learned? Can you read a book and be like, I'm a leader now?
No, that's not the process. I think you can read a book and gain awareness. Right?
Yes.
And my way, like I tell all my clients, there are three main paths to gaining awareness. I think that conversations with wise people help you gain awareness, right? And I would consider books in that avenue.
Yep.
I think that journaling is huge for gaining awareness, right? To really write down what your experience was, and so you gain a little bit of distance from your experience. And then when you go to talk to wise people, you have things that you've thought about already,
right,
and you can bring to them, right? Your wise people could be your captains on your team, the upperclassmen, some of your peers, your coaches, somebody like myself in the mental performance realm. And then the third is meditation and mindfulness, right? Where you're just spending time paying attention to what your state of mind is, right? And trying to be non-judgmental. You're also working on, bringing yourself to focus. You can do fixed point meditation where you're focusing on a point, and then you'll inevitably find yourself drift off. I've been doing meditation for 7 years. If you ask me to meditate for 1 minute and count how many times I lose focus, it's probably going to be between 5 and 10 times in a minute. And so every time I drift off, I try to non-judgmentally say, hey, there you go again. You're off on some other thought. Let's bring ourselves back to our fixed point. Maybe it's our breath. Maybe it's focusing on an item on the desk. Maybe it's focusing on a spot on the wall, right? But let's bring ourselves back to that attention. So you're flexing those mental muscles of focus, recognizing that you're distracted, and bringing yourself back to focus.
Right.
So those three things I think are really big for building awareness. For leadership, you can't just read a book and say, okay, now I'm a leader. You have to build that awareness. You have to say, like, okay, what skills resonate with me? Because every leader is going to be a little bit different. I don't think there is one rubric or framework scaffold for leadership. I think there are some that give you a general idea. It's like exercise physiology, right? Like, I don't care how many times somebody tells you that these are the workouts that you do to build VO2 max, right? And so if you want to be faster, you do VO2 max because there's a high correlation between VO2 max and performance. Well, yeah, but in the early 2000s, the 90s into the early 2000s for American distance running, they were focusing all on hard workouts, and kind of the base training of Lydiard and past generations went away. And we were terrible. We were absolutely terrible. That was my heyday. Like, I went to college in the 94 through 98. It's so much better now.
Right.
The early 2000s, we struggled. In 2000, I was a member of an Olympic development team, and I went down to Pittsburgh to the Olympic trials with a couple of my teammates for the marathon. And we qualified one person for the marathon that year to go to the Olympics.
Okay.
Only one person met the A standard. And a lot of that, I think personally, was that we were just following this new craze of exercise physiology and saying, like, here are the workouts that you need to do to really hit these max benefits, but we were throwing out some of the traditional wisdom. So now if you're reading a book on leadership, okay, what resonates with you? What do you think is going to sit well with you? And then what's your personal experience? What are your traits? Different people are going to be different types of leaders. I'm a pretty severe introvert, right? I'm not that person who's going to walk into a space and be extremely charismatic. And if I'm trying to be that person, it's going to come off weird, right? It's going to come off forced. There are those people. I've coached them. I've been friends with some of them. There are people, when they walk into a room, for better or worse, they walk onto a team and everybody wants to follow them because they are just it, right? They have that charisma. That doesn't mean that they're a good leader.
It's true.
Right? And so
leading them the wrong way.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But people want to follow them, right? And so I think for myself as a leader, I need to find clarity of who I am and how I want to lead a program. And I need to find consistency, right? So that when people show up into my space, they know that I've got I call it my 20 square feet, right? I got this from, I think, Urban Meyer and, a couple of the people that he was working with in the mental performance realm. You button down your 20 square feet around you. You sleep well, you eat well. I meditate, I do breath work, right? So that when you come into my 20 square feet, it's a pretty good place to bump up against.
Right.
I'm going to be the person that you think I'm going to be when you walk into that space, and the brain likes that, right? The brain likes predictive, and the brain likes to be able to predict that, hey, when I go see Coach Nate today, he's going to be the same Coach Nate that he was the last 20 times in a row that I saw him. He's not going to be, flying off the handle. He's not going to be, in whatever extremis that he's in because of his outside space. If they come in and my 20 square feet are on fire, then they're going to catch fire too.
Right.
And so I think that's a good lesson for coaches is, man, what are you doing to regulate, right? What are you doing? I think that's a huge part of leadership, is to be able to regulate yourself, so that you are creating that safe space for them to come into and be their best selves and experiment with different things. I think books on leadership, trainings on leadership are all very helpful. But then we have to say, okay, who is the individual, and how am I, again, going back to this person's core values, this person's strengths? What leadership tasks am I giving them as a coach? Am I giving them leadership tasks that match up with their strengths? It's okay to push somebody out of their comfort zone sometimes, but maybe we can microdose that for 2 years as they're a freshman and sophomore, so that by the time they get to a junior, they're ready to step into that vocal leader.
Right.
If we're expecting a kid who's a hardworking introvert who thinks everything through in their head 20 times before they say it, to come out as a junior and just automatically be the vocal leader on the team, that we're probably setting that kid up for failure, right? So how are we going to say as a sophomore, hey, you work your butt off and I need you to be one of the leaders on this team. And I know that talking at practice is harder for you because you've got, John over here and Sam over here and Elijah over here that are talking all the time, and you feel like they've already said it, so why do I have to say anything?
Right.
But I'm going to need you at the end of each practice to just say one little thing, right? Just little pieces here and there, and to let this kid know, like, I really value your hard work and what you're doing for this program, and I want to make you more visible.
Right.
I know you're not quite comfortable with that, but that's something, do you want to play in college? Because if you do, this is going to help you be a better player in college. This is going to help you get noticed by some of those sports, coaches. Same thing if we've got a really charismatic extrovert that everybody wants to follow. Okay, well, we better be coaching that kid up and reminding that kid, hey, what are our team core values? What are your core values, right? Remember that you need to do the off-season training as well.
Yeah.
Right? You can't just come in here and talk a big game on day one. Like, you've got to be prepared for this. And so I think it's really recognizing what the strengths are of our student athletes, what the leadership models might be, and then talking with those kids, right? Like, do they want to be a servant leader? Do they want to be, I'm a big proponent of transformational leadership over transactional, right? Transformational is where you are really thinking about, how do I help this person grow and get the most out of this for them, rather than how do I get the most out of them?
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
For this program. Right? it's hard sometimes because that's a natural tendency. I mean, we live in a capitalistic society where we're just trying to maximize benefits and profits, right?
Right.
And so I think coaches sometimes lose track of that. Like, we should be in this for the development of the individual and not just looking at that individual as a cog in the machine.
Yeah.
And so how are you taking those things and building up your leaders over time? Some people have it naturally, but we can build leaders.
Do you see a difference? Some college programs will have captains, and then some will have like leadership groups.
Yeah.
Do you see a difference in those two things, or a preference?
I myself am not extremely fond of captains. I think they serve a purpose and they serve a role. I think that the potential of a leadership group is that you allow more people to come forward and have ownership and leadership of a program. And that doesn't mean that I haven't had captains in the past, because I have. Sometimes teams need captains,
Right.
especially if you have an undeveloped leadership group. But if you have a well-established team culture, I think that going with a leadership group can be more, maybe more sophisticated, a little bit deeper.
Okay.
So that you're giving individuals more of an opportunity to step forward into leadership roles. But I think if you're not going to have, I think either way, captains or leadership group, right? You've got to have clear expectations set and intentions set, and you've got to, if you want it to be successful consistently, you've got to build them up for it.
Right. I don't know how you are on time. I do want you to talk about your business, though,
Sure.
just a little bit. So how long have you been in business?
So I stepped away from the head coaching position at Canisius back in 2021.
21. Okay.
Yeah. And I was thinking about that move even earlier than that. I have a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old. And when my 7-year-old was coming around, like, I know what the demands are of coaching, right? And I think that's one of the things that makes me unique in this field, is that I was an athlete. I'm still an athlete. I'm still competing and training every day, just not at a very high level anymore. But I did that for a long time, and I coached for 2 decades. And so I'm coming at it from a wealth of experience, knowing what it's like to be the athlete and be the coach at the same time. And so for me, I didn't think that I could do the coaching the way that I wanted to and do parenting the way that I wanted to. I knew that one of them would have to slip. I wanted to be more present. And this is not a knock at any coaches who are parents as well.
Right.
I know a number of colleagues within the MAC, the MAAC, that have done both very well. I know a number of colleagues from the high school level that have done both very well. I just didn't want to travel 30 plus weekends a year,
Right.
between competition and recruiting.
Because you're in a full year.
Yes.
In season.
Yeah.
For almost a full year.
Right.
And if you do winter indoor track, that is a full year.
Yes. Yeah. And so summertime is a lot of travel. And, if I'm gone with my team to the Paul Short Invitation on a Thursday and Friday, and then I come back to Buffalo, and then I'm heading down the road to Rochester to go to the McQuaid Invitational, one of the largest high school cross-country meets on the Eastern Seacoast, there's 3 days that I'm away from my family. And that's really hard. And for me, I didn't know if I could do both well enough to be satisfied with it. And so I primed my then assistant coach to take over my position. It was a nice, succession plan.
Yep.
And I stepped away, got him through COVID. I probably would have stepped away maybe a year earlier had COVID not happened, but that was very tumultuous. And so I got the program through COVID and turned it over to him, and then went back and got a second master's degree. I joke with my wife, I've got 2 bachelors now and 2 masters, and maybe at some point some institution will give me an honorary PhD.
What are your degrees in?
So I have a bachelor's degree in journalism.
Okay.
And a bachelor's degree in literature.
Okay.
And then a master's degree in multicultural literature, and then a master's in applied sports psychology.
Got it.
So it's a diverse background. And my daughters will ask me, wait, you used to be a teacher and you were a coach, and then didn't you work construction at one point? And wait, you worked on a paper for a while. You said something about a radio station. They don't realize how much you can do in 50 years of life. Being 5 and 7, it seems impossible. But I think that just gives me a unique perspective on this. And so after completing my master's in applied sports psych, a lot of research is me-search, right? And I was up and down with my confidence, up and down with my mental performance over my career. I saw a lot of my athletes that were up and down. And so I think that was always a frustration of mine. I could read an article on visualization, but when's the right time to do visualization with student athletes, right? Should we do it just before the championship? Should we be doing it all year long? Like, what does that look like? How do I individualize it? That information was not widely available through most of my coaching career. And so then going back and getting the second master's degree, I have more of a theoretical background to then say, like, okay, if a team comes to me or if an individual comes to me and they want to do a periodized program for mental performance, much like you would do a periodized program for physical performance, how do we set that up? What are all the steps that we want to go through in that to try to create a very psychologically flexible and resilient individual? So yeah, that's started my own business a little over a year ago, and have been doing that at a brisk level since then. Yeah, with the universities that I work with. And I go back to one of the things I mentioned at the beginning of this interview was I'm really all about relationships. I think that is, we lose track of relationships in sports sometimes for the performance and for the outcomes. And it's really all about, like, how do we connect with people and who do we become through this? The cliche of it's not the destination, it's the journey. Yeah, it really is. If you can focus on the journey and who you're becoming and how you're becoming that person for the people around you, that's one of the metrics for living a better life and living longer is the quality of the relationships that you have. Right. And so that's something that was always trying to work on with my teams, of really bond with each other, right? Really develop these great relationships. I've been to numerous weddings for my student athletes. I've been in weddings for my teammates when I was in college. I was just at the wedding for my former assistant coach. He invited my wife and I to his wedding this weekend down in Winston-Salem, and it was wonderful. But I think that's, going back to that, I have strong relationships with the people at Canisius. I have strong relationships with Tracy Murphy at Damon, the athletic director there, from our time together at Canisius. Strong relationships with the coaches like Sahar and Nasebe who've gone out to Eastern Michigan. And so that's my influence as they move out into the world is, trying to keep those relationships strong.
Have any youth organizations reached out to you at all?
Yeah, one of my close colleagues, Kim Griffin, she was the softball coach at Canisius, and she just, we call it retire, but she pivoted off of, being a softball coach into counseling. So she has a counseling degree, and she's gone into that field. We've worked together with a couple of youth softball programs. Okay. The Lancaster Heat was the most recent one. So, it's something that I would consider doing again. Like I said, I don't think I would want to work really with individuals, just because I try to guard my time with my family. Yeah. If I'm working with individuals, most people say, "Oh, I'm free after 6:30 in the evening," and so then it's for us, 5 to 8 o'clock is our bedtime routine. It's dinner somewhere between 5 and 5:30, and then we're pushing into bath time and bedtime and all that stuff. And so I'm not getting off until 8:15. Right. And then at that point, it'd be nice to have some time to sit down with my wife and be adults for a little bit before we have to go. Yeah. Before I go to bed and get up at 5 to go running in the morning. And
how many miles are you putting in a week?
Typically 40 to 50 right now. Yeah. Yeah. I try to get out for about an hour a day, 5 to 6 days a week. And, it's a big part of well-being as well. Physical movement is a big part of well-being. So whether it's getting in the gym or riding a stationary or getting out for a run, whatever, getting out for a walk, the new craze is walking with weight vests on.
Yeah, rucking. Yeah. I have a ruck pack, but and just mental health. Yeah, that just your. Yeah. When was your last marathon?
I ran Buffalo in the spring. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm trying to get back to the point where I can requalify for the Boston Marathon. I've done that.
What is that, under
times.
350?
For me now, as a 50-year-old, I just turned 50. I have to run. The qualifying time is under 3:20.
3:20?
But you had to be 4 minutes and 30 seconds ahead of the qualifying time this year in order to get in. So I really have to probably run somewhere between 3:10 and 3:15 to requalify.
What's your best ever?
2:40. Yeah, I was down there, and that was a time where
2:40.
we were doing some weird things in training and training too hard all the time.
A lot of injuries.
Yeah, a lot of injuries and just feeling burned out and not feeling your best on race day, stuff like that. But it was a good experience. I learned how to work really hard. So,
what's like your worst injuries?
My worst injuries, well, I was actually really durable. I'm not. Talent is multifaceted, right? And so I'm not the person that has a really high running economy. My body is not incredibly efficient. I had a really high VO2 max, right? And so like Frank Shorter was an Olympic gold medalist in the marathon for the United States back in the 70s. And his VO2 max, I think, was right around a 70 or 71. Mine was a 72, right? So mine's higher than some elite level athletes. I'm just really inefficient. And so, I can push really hard. My body was really durable. My worst injuries, though, I had a sports hernia that I had to have surgery for several years ago. And then I ended up having atrial fibrillation from years and years and years of distance running and being very fit. My resting heart rate was about 34 beats a minute when I was sleeping. And so I developed a faulty electrical signal within the heart that was kicking it up. After long runs, I'd be in AFib for 5 to 6 hours.
Wow.
And just be exhausted afterwards. So 3 years ago, right about 3 years ago from October, I had heart surgery to fix that. And so it's been a long recovery to get back to a level of competence again in that sport.
Do you miss coaching track and cross country at all?
I miss the relationships with the athletes. And so I think it's good for me. So it was really interesting. We talked about the identity piece earlier. When I stepped away from coaching, that was something that was a big part of my identity. And I knew at that point, I was in my 40s, like I'm not an elite level runner anymore. And it's really hard for us in sport to not be at our peak and to say, I'm still valuable to this sport. Right? When you're not playing anymore, what's your value to the sport anymore, right? Like you just don't feel like you have value. And that's one of the worst components of sport, is feeling like you're worthless because your body is not there anymore. So, I had still felt value for a long time because I had put my competitive nature from my own competition and competence there into coaching and built that competence as my my physical prowess has taken a nosedive. My coaching prowess was continuing to rise. And so I still felt valuable in the sport. So then I step away and I cede that position, to my assistant coach. And so that was a big identity hit for me. It was like, oof, like, what am I now? If I'm not a coach, I've done this for 22 years.
Right.
And I'm not a runner, and I've done that for, now 38 years.
Right.
Like, where's my identity? And so that was some searching for me. That's right around the time that I really gained clarity about my own core values of, well, here are my core values and my traits, and how can I take them into something else? What made me a good coach? It's not the fact that I was a semi-competent marathoner. Nobody cares.
Right.
You bore your student athletes to death if you just tell them stories about all your old workouts and races. They don't want to hear that, right? It was really caring for the individuals, right? Being very detail-oriented and putting in, my work ethic is really strong, right? And so if those are the things, being present for people, right? Like I'm a guy that I live in the city of Buffalo and I own a pickup truck. Totally unnecessary, right? But that's part of my identity of like, okay, if somebody asks me to show up and help them, then I'm going to be there. Let me clear it with my wife because we've got kids and I got to figure out when I can get there. But if you're asking me to come and move a refrigerator with you or a couch or a workbench that you saw at an estate sale, like I'm your man. Just give me 24 hours to get my ducks in a row, right? Yeah. And so how do I take those aspects? And this is what I do with student athletes, if they want to work with me in their transition out of sport is, let's again go back to your self-concept, your core values, your traits, your strengths, and say, you've honed these over time. How do we now apply these to the next chapter of your life? So I had to step away from all that with coaching, but how do I apply that to going into my next master's degree? I dove into it, right? And there was uncertainty, but I did everything I could, learned everything I possibly could, read everything I could, so that when I came out running in this new manifestation of myself, I'm helping people as best I possibly can, right? My growth and guidance core values, I wanted to grow, I wanted to get better, and now I want to come alongside individuals on their path and collaborate with them and guide them with the information and the experience that I have. And as I was doing that, 10 months later, after stepping away from the coaching position, I had the heart surgery. And so I couldn't even run at all, not even slowly, for 4 months after that. So my entire identity from the time I was 12 years old was just kind of stripped away.
Yeah.
In that amount of time. So it was really interesting. And I think it's really good experience to have, to say, like, yeah, your life can be turned upside down and you're still here, right?
You have that experience, and then you can just kind of pass that experience on to the athletes that are winding down their careers. And
hopefully,
stuff like that.
hopefully, everybody, there are some mistakes that people have to make for themselves. And I think that's one of the things I learned early on in coaching is, like, I'll try to help you, and I'll try to help you navigate some of the pitfalls and the mistakes that I made, but sometimes people just have to make mistakes for themselves.
Exactly.
So,
man, any recommended reading? I know you read a lot of, like, peer-reviewed, like, studies and stuff, but any...
Most of that is pretty boring for the general
exactly.
public. Let's see. For coaches, I love Cody Royal's book, The Tough Stuff.
Okay.
He's up in Canada, the Toronto area, and he just really talks about what it's like to be a head coach and the mantle that you don, right? Like the pressure that's on your shoulders. And he talks about ways to deal with that and, ways to regulate, and it just makes you feel less alone as a head coach. It's a really good book. If people want to get into, if coaches want to get into great ways to motivate their student athletes, I would say anything that deals with the self-determination theory. It's one of the primary models of motivation right now. The three main components of self-motivation or self-determination theory are mastery. Can you provide an avenue for people to get better?
Yep.
We love getting better as human beings. Autonomy. Is there some sort of ownership and choice that they feel like they have? And then the last one would be connection. Can you really provide opportunities for authentic connection within that program?
Right.
That's big for motivation. I think Stephen Rolnick's work on motivational interviewing is huge. It's active listening. It really teaches you how to listen really, really well, so that you can not just wait for your turn for somebody to stop talking,
right,
and then have your information that you're pouring into them. It kind of helps you try to dial down the fixing response that we have,
right,
and to be able to come alongside somebody and say, I understand your experience. What do you want to do with this? Right?
Yeah.
What, like, this is how you're performing right now. Where do you want to get to? What are your goals? How do you think you might be able to come around? So you're helping somebody see that it is their idea, and then they're much more motivated to follow through on any suggestions that you might have.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, those are great resources. I think it just depends on what you're looking for. There's any number of self-help books right now out there, right? You can kind of get lost in the weeds with a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
If you're looking for podcasts, I'm a big podcast person. I think that the Excellence Actually is a good podcast. It's got Steve Magnus and Brad Stulberg.
Steve Magnus is great.
Yeah. So Magnus brings in a lot of the sports psychology and the physiology side of things. And then Stulberg he's got a degree in public health.
Okay.
And he does a lot of research into regulation He's got a new book coming out, but their books are really good.
Steve Magnus is
and their podcast is really good. So those are easy ways to get into the field a little bit. Yeah.
Where can people find you? A website? And
right now I'm pretty off the grid, if you will. So if you want to contact me, just nhuckle@gmail is fine.
Perfect.
And I have no social media presence. I have that luxury, right? Like,
yes,
I'm 50 years old. This is my third career. I'm really invested in helping people, right? Like my purpose every day is to come alongside of somebody else, whether it's a coach, an administrator, a student athlete, and help them on their path to personal excellence and high performance. Do I want to make some money along the way? Sure. But that's not my driving force, right? And so I'm not really hustling right now. I have no social media presence. It helps me find clarity. It helps me focus on what's real and what's important. Helps me spend more time with my daughters and be present for the people that I work with. Email is probably the best way to do it. I'm on LinkedIn as well. You can check me out on LinkedIn. I don't know how that works. People find me, but it, and I'll go on there once in a while and like accept all the
exactly,
the connection requests. But again, like I'm not looking for a bunch of private clients right now. I'm happy to talk to coaches though, right? If a coach wants to reach out to me and say, hey, here's how we've done core values in the past, or here's how we've done our team culture in the past, and they want to have a conversation about that, I'm happy to consult. If a coach wants to bring me in to work with a team, we can probably work that out as well. My summers are pretty open. I work just mainly with women's basketball in the summertime, and so I've got more time in the summers if a coach wants to try to really get something rolling with their team. Right. Summers are tough because everybody's everywhere and they've got their work schedules and all that stuff. But if a coach wants me to work with a program, I'm a big proponent of high performance environments. So if we want to have conversations about how are you structuring your environment so that the greatest amount of student athletes coming through your doors are being successful, then I'm all about that. I don't necessarily want to work with the star striker on X program, right? Because it's going to have a very limited impact on that person and on the program. It's probably going to have no impact, unless that person is also a great leader and taking some of the things that we talk about and, talking about it with their teammates. But
have like corporations and businesses contacted you at all?
Not really yet.
Team building and
stuff
like that?
I've got a couple of feelers out there. Like, I know some people in the Buffalo corporate space, and they've said, "Oh yeah, we should really get you in, to work with our constituents, to work with our employees." And it hasn't happened yet. But,
right.
Probably at some point.
Maybe in the future.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, if there's
I learned a lot.
Any follow-up or feedback or any questions, feel free to reach out. Have your listeners reach out.
Absolutely.
That's perfect. I'm just trying to help people. So
thanks so much, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Of course.
Goodbye, everybody.
I hate soccer.